If you weren't mad about the Teoscar Hernandez trade, well, you're probably mad about it right now because yesterday the Dodgers moved on to the National League Championship Series. And who hit the deciding blow in the late innings of that ball game? It was former Blue Jay Teoscar Hernandez, who has been bailing out the Dodgers lineup all postseason long. So we'll break that down and much more in this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. I don't know what's going on with my background here. I'm going to try to fix that for you guys. But Nick, Teoscar Hernandez has been a point of discussion for a very long time now, and a lot of fans were angry about it at the offset when he got traded away to the Seattle Mariners. And Eric Swanson came in and kind of appeased some of those fans with the way that he pitched in his first year with the ball club. But it was a disaster season for him this year, whether it was what happened in his personal life, and we know that life is a lot more important than baseball. So maybe his mind was elsewhere in some moments where stuff was going on with his family. So I understand that. I'm going to give him a definite pass for what happened this season. But what what really ticked off Blue Jay fans was the way that Teoscar Hernandez has been performing all season long for the Dodgers. He would be number one in a lot of offensive categories for the Blue Jays, um, or maybe number two right after Vladdy. And the fact that he also was open to rejoining the Blue Jays in this offseason, and yet Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro seem to choose their ego over doing what's right and bringing back a player that really loved being here. So I'm torn here because I know that Eric Swanson is a huge part of this team when he's right and when he's healthy, but man, Teoscar just keeps delivering on the biggest stages, and he's not in a Blue Jay uniform anymore.
Yeah, Jays fans are across Twitter were fired up after yesterday's home run, and you mentioned it. I mean, ultimately, Teoscar Hernandez was traded to the Mariners. That was when their shift from offense to defense started. And after yesterday's game, when Teoscar Hernandez essentially won the Dodgers the game, Blue Jays fans, as you can see from this article, fans roast the organization on Twitter after Teoscar Hernandez's viral home run. And again, in hindsight, I still don't think it was a bad trade. I think the bigger problem was the shift in mindset for the Toronto Blue Jays. And now there's still an opportunity for them to make up this work, and we'll talk about it later with potentially bringing them back. But you mentioned it, their offense has been the biggest problem for the Jays really since 2023 there now. It's 2 straight years the offense has been very bad. This year was especially bad aside from Vladimir Guerrero Jr., among other things. But Peter, I mean, at the end of the day, Teoscar was a great player. He wanted to come to Toronto. Even that year's deadline, he was open to returning to Toronto if the Jays would have traded for him from the Mariners back in 2023. They decided to opt out and not go with that. But they had a lot of chances to get this guy back or even keep him on the team. I still like the trade. Their bullpen at the time when they traded for Eric Swanson was really bad. They wanted to address a position of need in exchange for a position of strength at the time. They also got back Adam Macca, who's starting to run up the ranks a little bit in the MLB Pipeline's top 30 prospects for the Jays. But seeing him shine in the Dodgers uniform, I'm happy for him because he's a great guy. We saw his reaction when Hazel May was
Yeah.
interviewing him. Like, he's a great guy. I love Toronto, and there's still a world where he comes back, which we'll break down in a minute. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is we could have expected this. He was one of the best hitters in the Blue Jays his whole career, and especially in the 2021 run and 2022 before he was ultimately shipped off to Seattle.
I gotta feel like that ship has sailed, though. The fact that he can come back here, they've had opportunities. They had an opportunity maybe at the deadline. The Mariners were sort of out of it the year that he was actually traded there, and they had an opportunity this offseason, and they failed to do so as well. So he ends up signing with the Dodgers, and it's not Ohtani who has been delivering the big hits in this series. Yeah, he had 3-run home run in game one or whenever it was, but it was Teoscar Hernandez who had that huge grand slam just a couple of days ago and had that home run to give them a bit of breathing room. He is clutch, man.
Yep.
And we remember his last game as a Blue Jay. He hit 2 home runs against the
Yeah.
Seattle Mariners in the playoffs. I was in the building for that. Obviously, it sucks the way that they lost, and I feel like the way that they lost is what propelled them into going into the defensive direction and the pitching direction. And that ultimately was the day that the Blue Jays started their downfall when they went in the opposite direction. They've been an offensive team for so many years. Even when Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro got there, they were one of the offensive juggernauts in Major League Baseball. and they've managed to strip away that identity from this ball club. And they've now gone from one of the most exciting teams to, even if they're not going to win a World Series, you know that they're going to hit bombs and you know that they're going to be one of those exciting squads. Now it's total opposite. It's lifeless, it's boring to watch, and they've stripped away a lot of the excitement that fans were having, and Teoscar Hernandez was a big part of that. He was a massive part of the culture in the clubhouse, of the play on the field, of the product that we were seeing every night. I mean, I love Teoscar. I'm still not against the trade because we got to remember that he was a free agent. Okay, so he had one more year left on his deal. And if the Blue Jays didn't have Eric Swanson that year that they got him, I don't know if they make the
Yeah.
playoffs. He was that essential and he was that good for them, logging almost 80 innings that year. So he was really important, and Teoscar was really important to what they were doing last year. But we knew that the bullpen needed a bit of a facelift, and Swanson was that guy ultimately. And I know we've heard the stuff that Teoscar wanted to come back and that he was so open to coming back to Toronto, but who knows? Like, let's say someone offered him a 5-year deal in free agency with one more year left on his deal, and he didn't get traded and he leaves, then you lose him for nothing. So that was a realistic possibility that the Blue Jays were facing. So I understand why they made the trade. It worked out in the first year, but now watching Teoscar Hernandez do what he's doing with the Dodgers and probably going to stay there now because they love him over there. It's just kind of gut wrenching and it feels like a knife just being twisted around into you and it sucks. No other way to put it.
I mean, the whole entire Jays season has sucked from the beginning onwards. But an article dropped saying the door is wide open for the Jays to bring back Teoscar. I'm with you. I don't think at this point, I think that ship has sailed a little bit. But if you are on the optimistic side, there is some interesting things here. A report came out from an athletic insider, from a Dodgers insider, saying the Dodgers have not had any in-season extension discussions with Teoscar. The slugger told reporters before tonight's elimination game, Hernandez doesn't seem bothered by the lack of talks, and he's focused on the season and hasn't given free agency much thought. And obviously the Dodgers are in the middle of a World Series push here. They're not going to be talking at this point about extensions, and they weren't doing it throughout the regular season. They were just letting him focus. And again, I don't think there was a world where Teoscar would have extended midseason or anything like that. But maybe if you're a Jays fan, you have a little bit of hope that he can potentially return to Toronto. Though I think at this point, the Jays are looking at different guys to change things up, whether that's Pete Alonso, whether that's the guys we've been discussing about. Juan Soto is a big one that they're in talks with, or hoping to be in talks with when the opportunity comes with the Yankees are eliminated in the offseason. Gets underway here. But at the end of the day, Teoscar Hernandez, I'd say he probably stays with the Dodgers or goes to another team, but the door's still open. There's still a chance. I just don't think it's
Yeah.
super likely.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we'll have to wait and see, but like we mentioned, Nick, I think they've had their opportunities and they failed to deliver on those opportunities. So, especially if he wins a World Series this year with the Dodgers, it gets incredibly hard to want to leave that situation. You play in LA. I get the taxes are high, but they're high in Toronto as well. So, look, if you win a World Series and you're placed in Dodger history forever, I really think that he's going to stay there and he would have no reason to leave that situation playing with the best player in the world and arguably a top 5 player in the world in Mookie Betts and a team that's guaranteed to make the postseason for a situation that is kind of up in the air, and we really don't know which direction the Blue Jays are heading in going into next year. There's a cloud of uncertainty on top of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Still hasn't signed a deal. Bo still hasn't signed a deal. They are in a state of flux right now. They're in limbo, whereas the Dodgers are going to be good for a while, and I think Teoscar wouldn't mind riding off into the sunset, knowing that that is their situation. So again, I want to be optimistic because I love Teoscar Hernandez and him reacting the way that he did, talking to Hazel May there. It made me nostalgic. It's like, oh man, I wish this guy was still a Toronto Blue Jay because he gave us a lot of great memories over the years. Just a couple that stand out, obviously, in the wild card game there before everything went south, and on opening night against the Texas Rangers when they were down 7-0, and then Teoscar hits that 3-run home run to tie up the ball game. That's when the Blue Jays were the most fun in this decade. It's those years right there when Teoscar was in the middle of things, and not this era right now where we're seeing a defensive scrappy ball club that can't scratch two hits together. So I want to be optimistic. I want to see him back, Nick, but I just don't know how it's a realistic possibility considering the way that things are playing out in LA for him right now.
And hopefully, everything you just mentioned it brought back a lot of memories, I'm sure, to a lot of people out there. But maybe this is going to be the off season where things
Maybe,
change and
maybe.
go back. Maybe it will be. And we'll keep you up to date with all the latest news. So make sure to hit the subscribe button. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are in Teoscar. And hopefully you're enjoying the playoffs. I mean, they've been great so far. And hopefully we'll see the Jays this time next year. But I think you guys watching. We'll see you later.